Many of our students don't see themselves represented in the teachers that stand in front of them in the classroom each day. Today, I talked to Sharif El-Mekki, the founder of the Center for Black Educator Development, about what it means to build out a Black teacher pipeline. Welcome to Focus on K-12, EdTech and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko, Education Strategist at CDWG. So let's dive in as we focus on K-12.
Yeah, my name is Sharif El-Mekki. I'm the CEO of the Center for Black Educator Development. And for 26 years, I was a teacher and a principal. The last 16 of those years, a principal, and was in 3 schools, during that quarter century time.
Amazing. So, love the idea, love the passion that you bring to it, and these, the center that you've started, right? So the Center for Black Educator Development, after a quarter century in education, why that?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, we saw that there were just not a lot of Black people being recruited, being hired to teach. When they were hired, we saw a higher attrition rate. We saw that students were not identifying teaching as a profession that they should or could aspire to. And we wanted to be about that change. And so we started the Center for Black Educator Development on 4 pillars. One, supporting policies that affect educational justice, professional learning, coaching, mentoring, workshops, pedagogy, uplifting the pedagogy that Black people have used in the past to successfully teach Black children. Something you don't often learn about in teacher college. It's often a Eurocentric lens. But we're like, hey, there are plenty of Black education theorists, behavior theorists, critical race theorists, and they should be central to your teacher college syllabi. And then the last one is pipeline. We thought the runway needed to start much, much earlier. Previously, I started the fellowship Black Male Educators for Social Justice, ended up being 17 Black men. None of us recall the time that someone invited us into the profession when we were in high school or college. And the first thing we did was make 2 commitments. Well, one, we said we were going to always engage our students, most of them who were Black and brown, to consider teaching, consider becoming the teacher they wish they had, knew they needed, or the teacher that they had that was amazing, and they pay it forward. But the other thing that we did was we started talking to our colleagues, and we just asked them, and most of them were white women, when did you first have a conversation with an adult about becoming a teacher? The average response was 3rd grade. So 3rd grade for one population, after college graduation for another population. And so we wanted to address that through our pipeline. So we got pipeline, policy, pedagogy, and professional learning. The 4 Ps, 4 pillars.
I love it. So this does not seem like the kind of work that you can just sit at the surface level for, right? So how do you go deeper with this?
Yeah, so I think with each thing is really understanding the root cause and then determining how you want to address it. I think a lot of times when you talk about the surface, people look at complex situations and they want the simplest response possible. And sometimes that may be it, but often if it's a complex issue, that means it's layered in reasons, right? It's layered in the foundational aspects of it and root causes. But if you can get to the core of it, and that's what we were trying to do. So with professional learning, and a lot of it comes from being an educator for such a long time, but also building a team with veteran educators. The folks who we launched the center with are veteran principals and other administrators and amazing teachers, leaders. And so that's the brain trust of the center. And we all had the experience of working in turnaround schools as well. So we've seen, what it means to dive into a complex issue, turning the ship around, aligning the systems, being of one mindset, and having a critical, laser focus on the mission. And so take the professional development, for example. So we look at their levels of professional development, and people can go to a workshop and then leave their tote bag in their trunk or in their closet. Some leave it at the conference hotel room, which is like, yeah, that was great. And then others may take that and struggle with it. All right, how do I apply? What was the accountability to learn? And when you go to a lot of workshops, the accountability is all on the presenter. Did they do a good job? Was it organized? Was it, sometimes entertaining enough? And the accountability lives in the survey at the end. Was it well organized? Did I enjoy it? Was it, thoughtful? Was the guide or woman nice? That kind of thing. They're respectful to the audience. But then we look at, there are different levels. So that might be level one, right? Like, what's your reaction to it? Did the learners enjoy it, enjoy the learning? But there are other levels, like level two, for example, that we talk a lot about is, did learning happen? Did learning transfer during this process of this workshop? Level three is like the impact. What impact did it have? Did the training, the development change behaviors? Like, are people addressing the mindset? 'Cause we talk about mindset, skill, and will as the triangle to teaching, to get a foundation of great teaching. It's mindset, skill, and will, right? And so where did the professional development impact that? And ultimately, PD, great professional learning, workshop, mentoring, coaching, should influence performance. And so that's what we're looking to do. So that's one example of how you can go deeper. Like, yes, we can provide professional development, but is it at the level four? Is it producing results? Because ultimately, all of this should result in student outcomes, accelerated student outcomes. If not, then we're just going through, sessions that don't matter quite that much. And we saw that in TNTP's report with the Mirage, like how many districts are just pouring money into uh, what they call professional development, but it's really not developing anyone.
Right. And I think there's also that misconception or the misunderstanding about the differences between like professional development, professional learning, training, right? And I think people use all of those terms interchangeably when really it's a lot different, right? So
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
think we've got to get a lot of people are in that training mindset. Like, how many continuing education units did I get from the session I was in
Just
today?
check, check,
Right.
check. Yeah,
Rather than thinking about how does this actually make change? How does this impact change?
yeah,
So
and the impact on students, right? So we talk a lot about, like, if you make a commitment to learn something, um, students should not only be the beneficiaries, they should often, be brought into the conversation, because we're talking about, again, accountability. Who better to hold us accountable than our students? We say, like, hey, I'm working on this. I want you to let me know if you noticed a difference, right? Like, I'm going to this course or this seminar. As I'm teaching, this is what they taught. Here are the bullet points, right? So not just the objective of the lesson. Here's my objective for my learning, right? I'm the lead learner. People use this rhetoric, but how do they apply? And I think that's a big part of what we try to do at the center, is help people apply, what they say they believe in or what they say they want to do. If you got a new haircut, you came into the classroom, kids will notice. They'll say, "Whoa, you got a fresh haircut." They never said that to me. They're like, "Yo, Joker, when are you going to the hair? Get a haircut?" But like when you walk in, they notice. It's new shoes. They'll notice. They're very observant. How many people go to professional development workshops and trainings, and they come back and teach, and students don't even, there's no blip on the learning radar for students. Students don't pick up that they're doing anything differently, trying anything differently. If I working on my biases, like, hey, I noticed that I'm only calling on, this side of the room, or I'm only calling on my white students, or I'm only calling students on the front. Like, those are very simple things. It's like, hey, I'm not just going to gauge this, and I'm not just waiting for my coach to pop in, or to be observed whenever that happens for some teachers. I'm asking you all, because you are a front and center every day, and this is what we talk about, centering the student's experience. Let me know if I don't. Let me know if I'm not doing this. They should
yeah,
be able to pick up on it.
and they always do, right? And they always hold you accountable. I remember, teaching my first year teaching, and I was a career changer, right? So
Mm,
did not have formal training, anything like that before basically
right.
being thrust into the classroom.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I had a student who would walk out each day, and as they were walking out, they'd walk by me and say like 48. 36, 62. Like each day they would say a different number. And
Hmm.
finally, like day 4, I said, hey, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on here? That's how many times you said all right today. And and I'm just thinking, like, oh, I'm not thinking about that at all when I'm up there. I don't know that I need to work on that. But to your point, who better to hold you accountable than the students that you're standing in front of for an hour every single day and who are paying attention, even if you don't think they're paying attention, they're paying
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the things you'd like them to be paying
Right.
attention to, but so maybe by having those conversations, you can refocus them as well onto the class and the meat of what's going on. So
Yeah.
I think
That's
that's a
That's
great
so important.
idea.
Yeah. I mean, bringing them into the feedback loop, right? Like that is part of your professional development. Like they are right there, independent. And obviously you can see some of they're disengaged. You can see general things, but depending on their age and the lesson and things like that, you can bring them in and we can be even more thoughtful about how we use their feedback to us.
So bringing that together with the hashtag Black Teacher Pipeline.
Right.
Um, so we often hear with programs and professional learning and all these different things that the strategy for getting this down to the student level is essentially hoping that by training teachers, by doing professional learning with teachers and leaders, that it will trickle down to the students. But we all know that hope is not a strategy. So what are you doing then at the center that helps really impact directly to the students?
Yeah, and as you said, we definitely want to work with teachers, and we believe that transforming the student experience will have an impact, right? Chris Emden used to come to our Black male educator convenings, and these were national events where Black men would come together. We would go through professional development, things like that. One of the things he would say is like, recruiting some Black children to become teachers is asking them to return to the scene of a crime, right? Like they had such horrific experiences that you're just saying, hey, come on back here. I know you were miserable then, but come try it now, right? And so growing up Black in America, growing up Black in schools is often similar to being Black and working in these same institutions, right? And so it can be very triggering. So yes, like with changing those experiences, but also going deeper than that. You talked about like surface level things and then how do we go deeper. And so what we wanted to do was provide an apprenticeship for young Black youth in high school and college who are interested in teaching, right? Like here's a course, here's a dual enrollment course, but here are opportunities to apply what you've learned, the theory and the practice. So here's a clinical experience teaching first, second, and third graders, particularly around literacy and what that means and how does it feel. And so we use the Freedom Schools model as our model. We believe it's just a fabulous model of community building, of civic engagement, of student leadership, all of that. And then we apply teaching to it. And so suppose we use this as a component of our teacher pipeline. Suppose we use this as a teacher prep, an apprenticeship. And so these students, what they're doing is and it's intergenerational, is high school students and college students being mentored by our staff and coached by our staff. And then they're teaching first, second, and third graders. My daughter has been in it a couple of years, and with an aspiring teacher as her teacher, right? Who gets coached, who gets observed. They do lesson plan polishing. They practice. They watch videos of themselves teaching. They try it again, right? Because it is this whole model of like, what would it take to help someone think about and develop? Because as a principal, I would have students who were interested in teaching, but they were flipping burgers for a chain restaurant, right? And so we're like, would you teach if we could pay you? Like, would you practice that? They're like, yeah, because I want to be a teacher, but often the opportunities that people offer me is babysitting, and that's not quite teaching. It's something, right? But it's not teaching. They're like, or I went to a camp, or I was a bus monitor. I was doing things, being around in proximity, but no one was teaching me about the mindset of teaching, the art and science of teaching, which is so complex and so rewarding and so important. So we wanted to do that. Like, what does it look like for a pipeline for all the components that we can see? Instead of just the leaky pipeline, we see where everybody exits. Suppose we build one that is robust, that is nurturing, that is sustainable, and that it's a long runway. So students as early as freshman year in high school can say, I'm interested in this and let me do it. If you want to be an artist, there's usually programs you can find. If you want to be a scientist, there's usually some kind of programs you can find. Robotics, the art museum, for us is the Franklin Institute. There are places you can go and do. And if you want to teach, where do you go to actually learn that outside of, like a summer camp or after school program? So that's what we want to do. We want to be more deliberate and more clinical about it, and take practices of teacher development and insert it much younger for high school and college students. We're actually recruiting 50 college students right now, as well as 75 high school students to do virtual Freedom Schools Literacy Academy. And we're hoping we could do a small in-person in Philly again.
That's great. I love that idea, and I think what's so important there is some people might think, oh well, they're already in classrooms, so they're getting experience, but it goes back to that idea of what's the difference between sitting through something and deliberate practice, right? So if I want to get better at tennis, I'm going to get a lot better if I can practice the individual strokes, practice in a game, than if I just go to a lot of matches, right? So I think that's
Right.
why that apprenticeship becomes so important. And I love anytime we are taking the work right down to the students level, right where they are. So Sharif, I want to thank you for sharing today. I loved everything about this. I can't wait to
Thank you.
dive in deeper.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And keep up the great work.
Thanks for joining us today on Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the little bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new episode. Or reach out to me on Twitter @dconopelco. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we focus on K-12.